anticipating this day. And for some of us, we have been preparing for weeks for this day or tomorrow morning. But on this Christmas Eve, in this time and in this space, I want us to take a breath. I want us to relax and really feel the comfort and joy and love of Christmas. One of my favorite memories as a child is when my grandmother would tell me stories. When she would keep me, and right after she had fixed me my sugar biscuit, and yes, it was a homemade biscuit with tons of butter and lots of sugar on it. It's a treat that only grandmothers give. After I would finish my sugar biscuit, I would ask her to tell me a story. And she would pick me up and put me on her lap, and she was short and round, so it wasn't a whole lot of lap, so you had to snuggle in. And she would tell me stories. And I knew I was loved and cared for as she rocked me in that rocking chair telling me stories. And so this morning, on this Christmas Eve morning, I want to give you a gift. I want you to feel loved and cared for through storytelling. I want to give you a gift this Christmas Eve morning. I want you to be a child again. I want you to put away those thoughts of everything you got to do this afternoon. I want you to put away the thoughts of everything you should have already done. And I just want you to be in this presence, in this place. I want to give you the gift of being a child on this Christmas morning. Because I want to share with you one of my favorite Christmas stories. The giveaway. Thank you. I think you've got it. The giveaway. It is written and illustrated by Ray Buckley. And Ray Buckley, well, he is a good old Methodist boy, and he is Native American. He used to work for the Methodist Publishing House for years. And many, many years ago, I went to a conference, and, well, Ray read this story. And this story touched me. So I hope that this morning, this story will touch you too. I know it's a children's story, but I think it's written more for us adults. But I hope you feel loved and cared for through the gift of storytelling. So sit back, get relaxed, get comfortable, but not too comfortable, and hear the Christmas story told in a different way. There was a grove of trees where the forest grew thick. The trees had stood there for as long as anyone could remember. Their roots intertwined so that nothing could affect one without affecting them all. They were known to the inhabitants of the forest, the four-leggeds and those who fly, as the Old Ones. In the middle of the old ones stood the oldest of them all, taller and broader than the others. If one stood beneath it, one could not see where its crown touched farther sky. And smaller trees grew around its roots in the safety of its vastness. It was called the Ancient One, for it had known the Creator longest of all. It was to this grove that the creatures of the forest and the plains, the four-leggeds and those who fly, gathered for counsel. Each had sent one speaker, the oldest and the wisest of its kind. Snow fell thick on familiar paths, and each arrived in silence, waiting with the patience of those who have seen much. When the circle was complete, they stood listening to their hearts. They have lost their way, Whooping Crane said. There is no pattern to their journey. Snow Goose nodded in agreement. They have lost their purpose, Deer Mouse said softly. They do not gather seeds. They do not know who they are. Tanka, the bull buffalo, dropped his head low. They take more than they need and give nothing back. They do not give away. They do not see long distance, Eagle began. They keep more than they can eat while some are hungry. They no longer know that they are connected. They do not know that they are beautiful, Fox said sadly, her white coat blending with the snow. They decorate themselves with stones and hide their spirits. They think that power is what they can hold on to, old Beaver pondered. They say, "This is mine," and build lodges too large so that they themselves will appear big. They must make others small so that they will look big, Bear's deep voice answered. In the end, they must destroy themselves or others. They have lost their names and do not know who they are. Grandmother Turtle, who was the last to arrive, made her way softly to the center of the council. She lifted her head so she could see all who gathered beneath the old ones. Her voice was barely audible. We must give away ourselves to them. We must speak to them in soft voices. We must remind them of who they are. She paused, lowering her head into her shell. Then suddenly she lifted her head as high as her neck would allow. "I will give them my shell," she said with certainty. "I will come with no protection, and they can use my shell to adorn themselves." Around the circle, the council was silent. The wind did not blow through the trees. Not a single branch on the old ones fluttered. The forest was still as Grandmother Turtle began her walk back to the empty spot in the circle. teach them the patterns of life, Whooping Crane said slowly. Snow Goose and I will remind them of the seasons. I will teach them to gather seeds so that no one need be hungry, Deer Mouse began. I will give them what I have stored. Eagle searched the night sky and without lowering her head said, I will give them my feathers. Perhaps if I cannot fly, they will not feel small. Tanka, the bull buffalo, stood with his legs squarely on the earth. I will give them my flesh to sustain them, and my skin to warm them. I will give myself away. Each council member in turn rose to speak of the gift, that most costly portion of themselves that each would give away. When the circle was complete, a new voice was heard. In the shadow of the Ancient One stood the Creator. Ho, children, the Creator began softly. You will give yourselves away, but they will not know that. They will say, see what I have taken, and think that they have made themselves larger. For a moment, the Creator paused. It is I who must give myself away. I must give away my protection and come vulnerable to their lodges. I must choose to become small so that they can choose to know me large. I must give away my name so that they can know their names. The Ancient One had stood silent. The sound of his voice had not been heard in many winters. Creator, how can this be? How can the great mystery become small? The Creator stood beneath the Ancient One. The shadow of the great tree became light, and the grove of the old ones became full of the presence of the Creator. A baby will be born. He will be the son of the great mystery. He will be born not where the two-leggeds are gathered, but among the four-leggeds and those who fly. He will bring light into confusion. He will bring hope into despair. He will bring love, and his name will be great. The Ancient One began to tremble, and those who fly left its old branches. The grove of the old ones moved in its quake. Creator, what can I, whose name speaks only of my age, give away to the great mystery, become baby? What can I do from my grove in the forest? The Creator turned toward the Ancient One. The voice of the Creator was low. You will be his support. You will be his place of rest. You will hold his body. You will hold him up in the beginning and the end. And the Ancient One wept, partly for joy and partly for sorrow. That's the story of love. God came because humankind had lost its way in the darkness. So he came to show us his unconditional love. My favorite line in this whole book is where the Creator, where God says, I must choose to become small so they can choose to know me large. And then the Ancient One, that old tree, asked the question, but what can I do? What can I do? And God said, well, you have a very important job. Your wood will make that manger that will hold his body in the very beginning. And your wood will be the cross. You will support him in the end. And on this Christmas Eve morning, we may ask ourselves, what can we do? And I think God would answer us by saying, love him large. Love God so large that we will support the ones that have lost their way. I think God would tell us to love him so large that we would support the ones that do not know of his unconditional love yet. So on this Christmas Eve, on this day that we come together to celebrate the love of our God, let us all choose to love him so large that we will support all the people he puts in our lives. Amen. Let us stand for our closing hymn, which is Good Christian Friends Rejoice. Please stand.